Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast In the Loop. This is a newer thing that I'm doing here. I'm doing a podcast. Well, I had posted podcasts. I'm Jay Byrne, by the way, and this is the FX Loop channel. I also do SFX Loop stuff, which involves, movies and physical media and stuff. And I might mix a little bit of that into the podcast as well. Right now, I'm going to try to stick to the guitar stuff for a little while, but I got some stuff I want to talk about as far as physical media is concerned, and I think I might actually kind of throw that into this episode just because, I don't know, it's what I want to talk about. But yeah, so how's everybody doing? We are going to get going here. Yeah. I'm kind of off the cuff this week. I haven't, there was no video this week for either FX Loop or SFX Loop. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, because it's summertime, it's hard to get these videos out when I'm dealing with having my daughter home, who, it's her summer vacation. And she wants her parents' attention, and it's just hard to put aside the time to do this stuff when you're constantly the one that's taking care of your kid, and especially she's like 9, so she's at that age where she's always wanting to play and do stuff and that kind of thing. So it gets a little tricky trying to do this and that at the same time, where I don't have the break of the school day, where I get a couple hours where I can record a video or do a podcast or whatever. Right now, my wife's actually out there going for breakfast and food shopping, so I'm lucky. I've got some time here where I can actually talk for a little bit. So I'm going to do this podcast this week and get the podcast up this week, and I'll try to get a video up next week as well. I'm not sure what next week is going to be yet, if I want to do an SFX Loop video or if I want to do an FX. It'll probably be guitar. Because I have a bunch of things I want to do with guitar videos that I haven't done yet, and I just keep kind of pushing them off. So yeah, so that's that. And maybe I'll do, in this episode of the podcast, we'll do some of the what would have been the SFX Loop stuff, talking about physical media and whatnot. But anyway, we can start with a little bit of news, because I was just reading this thing, and this is guitar related. This is kind of interesting. Neural DSP just unveiled what they call Tina. Tina is a robot that promises to revolutionize the digital amp modeling world forever. Basically what this is it's a robot with like actuator arms, and what it does is it connects to an amplifier, and it studies all the parameters of the amp and all the different interactions of the amp, and it takes out the human factor. So basically what Neural DSP is claiming Tina can do is that Tina can actually model an amp better than a human can, because there's no bias. Like she doesn't go, well, I like Marshalls over Fenders, or this and that. Like there's no human bias there. So this Tina thing is, I'm looking at a picture of it right now. It's pretty crazy looking. It just looks like it's weird. It looks like I don't know what it's supposed to be. Is it modeling that amplifier, or is it that what Tina looks like? I don't know. It's a picture, and it's these weird little like connectors. It connects to all the knobs, and it plugs into all the inputs, and it literally like runs the amp through its paces, and it figures out. And it models the amp that way. It's a new way of amp modeling, which is pretty fascinating, actually. The only problem that I have with this is I feel like this will give Neural DSP a way to say, well, our amp model is more accurate. Whether it is or it isn't, they'll just be able to say it because they have the data to prove it. Whether that data means anything or not. You know what I'm saying? It's just very, very weird. It's just a really, really weird thing here. Yeah, it's just meet Tina, the first robot capable of modeling amplifiers with unparalleled precision and speed. And this is Neural DSP, so this would be quad cortex. So they're trying to like put themselves at the forefront of amp modeling. Basically, they're trying to make it so that like their quad cortex is like the best amp modeler, which is is cool, actually, and maybe it will become that way. But honestly, I feel like, for me personally, I feel like amp modeling has reached a peak where almost all the modelers sound the same. Like, they're very, very close to one another, and it's a matter of personal preference, which one you like and which one you don't like. Like, I personally just recently got, I think I talked about it in the last podcast, I had gotten rid of my pedal board, my pedals, physical pedals, and I bought an HXFX. And I got to tell you, like, I feel like the modeling of the pedals in the HXFX, while I don't feel like the knob configuration for each pedal works exactly the same as a real analog pedal. But I feel like if you have the patience to take the time to work on it, and it doesn't even really take that much time, but if you have the patience to work on it, that you can get, like, say, like the Tima model in the HXFX, which is a Timmy. Okay. You can get so close to a real Timmy. You can get so close to what it sounds like using a real Timmy through, say, like a Fender amp or something like that, that I don't think it matters to most people. Like, honestly, it only matters to, I guess you would use the word cork sniffers. You know what I mean? People who are going to be like really, really freaking picky about it and are going to have a problem with everything. They're the only ones where it's going to matter if it's exactly the same or not, or if it's missing a little bit of that analog warmth. In the end, it doesn't really matter. Be like Bill Murray in Meatballs. It just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't in the end. As long as it sounds good and it records well, and yeah, it's not really an issue. So, I don't know. But anyway, this Tina thing, this is pretty crazy, right? Like, it's a robot that controls the amp and models it. And yeah, apparently it's the big deal with neural DSP. So it says, in the spaces between the markings on the amplifier controls, gain, bass, mid, treble, presence, master, there's an entire universe of complex interactions and sonic distinction. But in trying to digitally emulate that process, even snapshot models of different configurations of those controls cannot translate all of the possible fine-tuned interactive combinations. And managing those million or more combinations would be impossible. So what they're saying is, no matter how good the modeling is, there's always going to be something that it misses. But apparently Tina is better at collecting that data because it's, AI computer-based, and it can figure everything out. I don't know. All this like robotic and AI stuff that's popping up everywhere is kind of crazy. Like, I feel like we're getting into Skynet territory. Anybody, my Terminator reference there. Like, all of a sudden Skynet's going to take over, but maybe Tina will take over. But Tina's kind of limited. She's just going to talk about amps. So she's going to be like a really boring guitar guy who just talks about guitars and amps. Like I guess the way we feel sometimes when we're talking to our significant others or friends about new amps and pedal technology that they could really give a crap about. They just don't care. That's what Tina will be in the Skynet world. She'll be like the one that they push aside and be like, shut up, Tina. We don't care what the Marshall Plexi sounds like compared to a JTM 45. We don't care what a JCM 800 sounds like compared to a JTM 45, and it's minute differences. But anyway, yeah. So I guess Neural DSP had an update too. It's got a Core OS 3.00 update. So, and there's a lot of new stuff in that. I have Neural DSP. No, I don't have a Quad Cortex. So I would not know. But I hear they're nice. I wouldn't mind trying one, but I hear they're nice. This is another cool story I thought was kind of funny. Apparently, Guitar Center found thousands of dollars worth of meth in a guitar amp. It was at a Guitar Center in Lawrenceville, Georgia. They found thousands of dollars worth of cocaine and methamphetamine stashed inside a guitar amp. On July 17th, the staff members opened what they thought was just another delivery box, only to discover the drug stash. It's believed that the amp was mistakenly delivered to the store. Yeah, probably. I don't know why. I don't really, unless it was just like I how does that even happen though? Because like, all right, you send something to, like, if people are using a guitar amp to smuggle drugs, which is not the craziest idea, because if you put it in the back, of a closed back cab, you could fit a lot in a closed back cab. Wouldn't the shipping address tell you where that's going, or at least, that's where they were going to intercept it? And why would they intercept it at a Guitar Center? That doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would the Guitar Center be the intercepting point? Because, I mean, it's not like you're just going to walk into a Guitar Center, grab an amp, and walk off with it. You're going to have to pay for it. You're going to have to buy it. And if you don't get in there and buy it in enough time, maybe somebody else will buy it before you do. So then some random dude's going to go home with like thousands of dollars worth of meth, basically. But that's just so weird. Apparently, the Guitar Center employees did the right thing, and when they found it, they contacted the police. And so, yeah. So you didn't have a bunch of Guitar Center employees. Can you imagine the conversation? I can just imagine like 4 or 5 guitar. This is like a movie in itself. It's like a Quentin Tarantino movie. A bunch of Guitar Center employees in the back deciding what they're going to do with the meth. Well, Joey has this little side business on the side, and he's got some customers. I mean, maybe he could just take it and sell it, and we could split the money. And like, it's like the freaking, I don't know. I don't know. It's crazy. Like I can just imagine the conversation before they called the police. Like, what the hell do we do with this? But it's such a strange concept that they found a bunch of meth in the back of a guitar amp. I'm sure this happens more often than we're ever informed about. I guarantee this isn't just like a one-off, happens every once in a while type of thing. I bet this happens more often than we would like to think. It probably different industries though, like furniture industry and stuff like that. I'm sure it happens a lot with furniture industry, with furniture and bedding and stuff like that, because that stuff can be stuffed inside a mattress or whatnot. But yeah, it's crazy. It says most of the time, police say a specialized unit seizes the drugs before they're ever delivered. Ah, okay. However, the shipment seems to have slipped through the cracks. Okay, so typically police get this stuff before it, shows up where it's supposed to go. But man, that's just crazy. I don't know. I think that's a nutty thing, right there. Let's see. Any more interesting news to talk about? I guess if you're into this, Eric Clapton, Elvis Costello, and Lucinda Williams are going to be paying homage to Robbie Robertson at a star-studded tribute event at the Kia Forum on October 17th. It's interesting that it's taking place at the Kia Forum because it seems like a lot of bands that film shows, like like the recent Ghost movie and stuff was filmed at the Kia Forum. I guess since it's California, like whatever, they're used to the film industry. So it's probably easier to film at a place like the Kia Forum. They probably have more stuff in place where you can actually film a show. So I wouldn't be surprised that if this show was filmed and is broadcast on something or released or something like that. So that would be Eric Clapton, Elvis Costello, and Lucinda Williams among the artists paying homage. So it's going to be like a star-studded event type thing. Tim Henson from Polyphia has 7-string headlines mega new Ibanez signature guitar drop, including a Paul Gilbert Fireman. I saw something about this the other day with the world's first mod. It's a Paul Gilbert has a built-in like magnet, so you can stick your slide to the guitar. That's kind of fascinating, right? And I guess it's these extended range guitars, these 7-string guitars. It's another line of Polyphia guitars. Although I don't know how they are, but I've seen some negative reviews of these guitars. Like they're not very good. Like they're maybe like the higher end models are really good, but they have like the budget models, and the budget models they have a lot of problems. So yeah. All right, so that's about all I got here as far as news. It says something about Moore here. Moore cements itself as the accessible amp modeler maker to be with upgraded GE200 Pro. So the it's okay. I guess the GE200 Pro by Moore, which is a very cheap company. You can find their stuff very inexpensively. I guess they're making a very inexpensive amp modeler that people can get their hands on, and it's not that bad. So I'm sure you'll see a lot of videos about that out there. But yes. All right. Anyway, you know what? Let's shift gears here, and we'll do a little bit of SFX loop type stuff for a little while here, and talk, because I wanted to talk about physical media a little bit, because I've been watching tons of, because I have a big movie collection. I've been selling a lot of them, actually. I've been kind of purging a lot of my collection just because I just don't have the space for it anymore. And there's a lot of stuff in my collection that I don't watch, that I buy just as a collector, just to have. And so, yeah, every now and then I'll reorganize. I'll go through, grab like 50 or 60 movies and sell them or something on eBay. And that's what I've been doing. But basically, it got me, I started watching all these like collection videos that are on YouTube. And I'm noticing an interesting trend. Apparently amongst the like younger generation, because I guess I'm a Gen Xer. So, yeah, I'm a Gen Xer. My parents were like from the boomer generation. And I guess old generations past me, like what, like Alpha, I don't know all the generations. I don't keep track with that stuff. But it's DVDs are making a big comeback amongst the younger generations. Like collectors, they're buying DVDs. I think it's just because it's cheap. I don't really understand. Like personally, I worked my way through the formats. Like, I mean, I started out with VHS. I had a good sized VHS collection, never as big as what I've got now, but it was good. I had like 100 videotapes or something like that. And then I went from VHS to Laserdisc. Laserdisc was the next step for me. And I had a pretty big Laserdisc collection that ended up selling off because Laserdiscs basically just became defunct. And it was like, what do you do with them? Like, you couldn't sell them. You couldn't give them away practically. So I sold them at a yard sale. I think I sold literally, it was like $75 for like 100 Laserdiscs or something like that. And the guy just took the whole collection. So I hope he took care of it, and it was good for him. I mean, it probably ended up getting sold off or thrown away at some point in time, or maybe now, because Laserdisc has a bit of a comeback, so to speak. Maybe now it's there, somebody have bought up pieces of it. It's probably all over the place, because pieces have been sold and whatnot. The problem with Laserdisc, though, is Laserdisc develops what's called laser rot, and a lot of Laserdiscs suffer from it. It's just, the format in general just has issues. Then we went from Laserdisc to DVD. DVD was the new thing, and I'm like, I'm not going to upgrade to DVD. Why would I bother? But of course I did, and then DVD became the thing. And apparently DVD is becoming a thing again. And I think DVD was one of the best formats. I'll argue that it's sort of tied between DVD and Blu-ray. I love 4K, don't get me wrong. I collect a lot of 4K discs. I went DVD, Blu-ray, and now I'm in 4K. And this is my end point. It's probably the end point for physical media anyway, but this is my end point because I can't afford, and I'm not going to rebuy anymore. I'm sick of buying the same movies over and over again. But I will upgrade my favorites and the movies that I want to upgrade now to 4K, and then that's going to be the end of it, and I'm going to call it a day. But there's the thing about 4K, though, that's a little annoying, is that the discs tend to be a bit more glitchy, and they're way more sensitive to like fingerprints and scratches and stuff like that. Way more sensitive. Like, it's like the disc has to be spotless for it to play good. And occasionally you can have like a minor scratch on a disc and it won't cause any problems. But if it's radial, like it's circular, it kind of follows the pattern of the laser. then they tend to cause more problems. Like you can have a straight scratch across the surface of like a Blu-ray or a DVD, and it won't affect anything. As long as it's not too deep, of course. But if it's like circular, like radial, it's like, I guess because that's the pattern of the lasers going in, the laser almost gets caught up in it. It messes with the laser. It fractures the laser as it's reading the disc. So then you have freezes and skips and stuff. And if there's like a lot of times you get an oily substance on discs when you buy them too, like from the factory, you must have to clean them first, because sometimes that oily substance, even though you can't always see it, will affect the laser. It deflects the laser the way it plays on the disc, and it'll cause it to skip. And it's a real pain in the butt to like go to like a Barnes and Noble. In Best Buy was the worst. Like when Best Buy had physical media, they don't have it anymore. Was to go there and actually talk to somebody about like try to explain to some employee at the counter like why your disc is skipping and why it isn't working. Like they don't need the science. They don't care about the science. It's like, okay, well, we just don't accept exchanges. And it's like, hello, excuse me. I'm not exchanging it because it doesn't work. There's a lot of defective discs that go out there. I mean, a lot of people will be like, oh, I've never had one, but no, there's a lot out there. But yeah, anyway, back to my original comment about how like this younger generation is latching onto DVD, which is very interesting to me. They're just, I don't know, they're just grabbing onto DVD and it's becoming a thing. So I find it odd to me. And some of the comments about why, like one video I saw, this girl, I don't even know who she is, so I'm not going to say who it is, but it was just a YouTuber, said that she liked DVD because she thought the cases looked nicer than the Blu-ray cases. That was just a weird, like she enjoyed the aesthetic look of DVD over, say, like Blu-ray and stuff, which I got to admit, Blu-ray cases are kind of ugly. Like the small case, DVD cases kind of technically looked nicer, I guess, but it's just a weird thing to like. That's just so weird to me, to like, that's the reason why you collect DVDs, and people trying to find like, oh, I'm trying to get the whole Friday the 13th collection on DVD, but it's kind of hard. Of course it's kind of hard. Those sets have been out for a million years, and the chances that you're not going to end up with half of the discs that you buy aren't going to freaking play because they're so old. I just don't get it. I don't know. I come from a different. I went through the whole physical media thing all the way up to 4K, and I'm at my end point. The last thing I want to do is go back and start collecting DVDs again. I mean, all my DVDs that I currently own, I had like 200 DVDs or some stupid crap like that. I bought like these plastic sleeves so that I could put the inner sleeve and the disc in like a paper sleeve inside the plastic sleeve, so it makes them like thin, so you can put literally like 200 movies on a shelf. I did that recently, and I was a little bit nervous about doing it because I didn't want to fold up my sleeves and stuff like that. I was like, man, the collector in me had an issue with that. But once I started doing it and I got them all on the shelf, and they actually look quite neat. Like it's very organized and neat looking, and everything looks nice and clean because it looks like it's brand new because it's inside these brand new sleeves. So it actually kind of revitalized the DVD collection to me in a weird way. It sort of made it like look like something new. So I've actually gone back and watched quite a few of my DVDs throughout this process because I forgot I had them, But yeah, I don't know. Physical media is always going to be around. There's always going to be some form of it. I mean, look, we got vinyl. People collecting vinyl now again. I collect vinyl. It's like I can't do cassette tapes because honestly, I think tape is probably the worst format that ever existed. It was great for cars and stuff, but like it is such a disposable, easy to damage format. Like, I mean, look, records. There are records that have been around since like the 60s. People have their original record collections from the 60s and they still play good. I mean, if you take care of them. I mean, I have like a few. I have like a Beatles. Well, I had a Beatles record. Do I still have? No, I don't have that anymore. I had this Beatles record. I had A Hard Day's Night, which was an original, which didn't sound that great to me, but it was in like perfect condition. It was kind of neat to see. And I have an association record that is like an original from the 60s, and that's kind of cool. But it's just neat that you can still have that stuff and it still plays. Like I bought a bunch of Chet Atkins records, and those were all from the 60s, and they're originals. And I had paid like nothing for them. They weren't worth much, but they're all in perfect condition and they all play perfectly. So can we say that that's going to happen with like DVDs and Blu-ray? And in some cases, DVDs are proving to be that durable. I think Blu-ray is probably the best format of all the formats. I almost wish I never even started collecting 4K discs and just stuck to Blu-ray. And then I would just be like, whatever, I'll just get the Blu-ray version. And if I can't get the Blu-ray version, then I just don't own the movie. It would have made things a lot simpler, life a lot simpler, but the collector in me would not allow that, unfortunately. But yeah, this is my little rant on physical media. I'm not going to go too much deeper into that, but that's a little bit of SFX loop kind of stuff for this episode of the podcast. But not really sure what to even talk about this week. I don't even know why I bothered to do a podcast, because I didn't have a lot to talk about, but I figured I wanted to get something up and I wanted to have something out there. What are we looking at? We're at 26 minutes. Okay. Well, let's talk about, you know what? I want to talk a little bit about, as far as guitars and gears are concerned. Let's talk about gas, okay? Gear acquisition syndrome. I made a video about this a while back, and I feel like a lot of the guitar world, the gear world, is fueled by this gear acquisition syndrome. Always feeling like we need to have the next best thing. It kind of fits into the physical media conversation a little bit. For me, like that's how it went. Like I want 4K. But with gear, with guitar gear, it's a little different. Like I have a Katana Artist Mach 2, the head in the cabinet, okay? I can't get this nagging feeling out of me that I need to get the Gen 3 when it comes out, the Katana Gen 3. And I have a million reasons for it. Like, well, there's some updated like connectivity stuff. You know, they fix the amp models. When is that going to stop? When am I ever going to be like, okay, this sounds great? Because right now, the Mach 2 sounds good enough for me. Like, it sounds great. It's a great sounding amp. You can do virtually anything with it. Between that and my Fender Tone Master Princeton, I've got so many bases covered as far as tonality is concerned for recording and for whatnot. I don't need anything else. If I was going to get something else, get a modeler or something like that I can use to record with or something. As far as physical amps are concerned, yeah, it's not always about need though. Sometimes we just want what we want. Like, I mean, I wouldn't mind having a tube amp again. I think I talked about this in the last podcast. You know, these Marla amps, which are kind of affordable, American-made, handmade tube amps are kind of intriguing me, you know? It's a more kind of a Fender-y type thing. But do I need it? No, I definitely don't need it. There's no question about that. There's no reason why I need another amp. It's just not. I don't have the room for it. I don't play my amps at any type of volume where I would ever need something big like a Marshall, like a 100-watt Marshall. I mean, who's buying 100-watt Marshalls anymore, right? The only people that are buying them are people that are buying them because of the nostalgia factor. But who goes out and buys like 100-watt, like, do they make 100-watt JCM 800s? I don't know. But like 100-watt JCM 800. I mean, unless you're a touring musician and you're touring the US, who's buying that and like 2 412 cabinets to play in their house, or even just 1 412 cabinet to play in their house? Like, I can't justify anything over a 212 anymore. I actually kind of like combos, like 112 combos, but there is something about a 212. You can get a little more thump to it. I mean, you get way more thump with a 412, but I can't justify that anymore. Like, Because even if I was to play live, even if I was to be in a band and play live in clubs locally, because let's be honest, it's probably going to be a local thing. And even if it wasn't a local thing, it's going to be, different. Like I still get away with a 212 cab on stage, like a 50-watt 212 cab, no problem, without any issues. It would be mic'd through the PA system or directly connected to the PA system or both, just to kind of combine the two. It wouldn't be a problem. So there's no reason for me to have anything like that. I just don't know who's buying that stuff. Who can use that stuff? I mean, you got your own house and a huge basement or something. Maybe you can, but literally you're just destroying your hearing unless you're wearing earplugs. And if you're wearing earplugs, what's the freaking point? Like, if you're kicking the sound down in your ears just so you can play it really loud in the room, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I'd rather have an amp that can attenuate down and sound decent at a low volume so I don't have to wear the earplugs, rather than one that I have to crank and wear earplugs and use attenuators. And God, it's just too much work. I went through that, man. I had tube amps. I went through that whole process, and it led me back to solid state, like modeling type stuff is what it did to me. Because like in a small apartment, you just can't enjoy even a 20-watt like studio Marshall head and like a 212 cabinet. You can't enjoy it. It's too freaking loud. You can't get it to a volume that's comfortable, like with other people in your house. If I want to play guitar and like my wife and my daughter are, in the next room playing video games or something like that, or watching TV. I mean, if I'm blasting out a freaking tube amp in here, if I'm wearing headphones, they can't hear anything out there either. Plus, I'm in an apartment and I'm dealing with people in the building. Luckily for me, the guy who lives above me is like deaf. He's an older man and a gentleman, and he's like, he can't hear anything. So I never have any problems with volume issues. I don't think he'd never be able to hear it. But it's not always going to be that way. There may be a time where we'll be somewhere where we'll have to worry about volume or whatnot. But yeah, this constant need to, I mean, like you see this with the, back to the gas subject again. You see this with a lot of the guitar YouTubers, and myself included, where it's like, I mean, I'm not one of the bigger ones. I mean, of course, I'm kind of an up-and-coming newer guy, but I'm trying. You see, like it's like this thing where all of a sudden something will come out and everybody has to talk about it. It's the new great big thing. And, I've fallen into that a little bit. There's been times where I've bought the newer thing and then I made a video about that. But you always move on. Very rarely do you, well, most of us just buy stuff and then sell it and buy it and sell it and buy it and sell it. That's kind of the way it goes in this world, this guitar amp gear world. It's the way a lot of us function. And we've accepted it as normal, but I don't know that it is normal. I mean, unless you're a collector, I don't see how, spending all this money and then selling it back, spending all this money and then selling it back. It becomes tiresome after a while. It's become tiresome for me. Like, I just want a couple pieces of good equipment that can do a good amount of stuff, enough to keep me happy. And then I'm not gonna, be constantly wanting to upgrade my stuff all the time. Because with my OCD tendencies, I can definitely fall into the, I got to get the new thing. Look, I was talking about the Katana just earlier, the Gen 3. My brain just keeps telling me, you need that Gen 3, you need that Gen 3, you need that. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to end up with it. When they're finally available, I'm going to sell my amp and I'm going to get the Gen 3. I'm going to find reasons for it. You wait and see. My brain's going to find, well, it's the newest version. It's probably good to have the newer version. Yeah, this is the world that we live in. This is the consumer culture that we've been designed, we've been forced to be a part of. I know a lot of people can avoid it. There are a lot of people out there that don't get sucked into this stuff. But then again, they're also, most of the people that don't get sucked into the consumer side of it are sucked into another ideology. Maybe they're more worried about, their house or their car, or they're worried about their home, that stuff, which is a whole other issue, which is a whole other thing that people obsess over. So it's like you take one obsession and supplement it with another, supplement it with another. And yeah, I don't know where my thoughts are going here today. They're kind of all over the map. So I hope anybody who's listening to this can follow me, because I'm not sure I follow me today. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just weird. And I've been noticing this thing too with a lot of guitar YouTube channels. Like I watch a lot of different guitar YouTubers. Like I watch across the spectrum. Excuse me. It's how I decided that I kind of wanted to be a part of this world. This guitar YouTuber world. I thought it was something that I could do. I've got the filmmaking knowledge. I know how to make a video. I can, I think I'm a pretty decent guitar player, and I had some equipment at the time. And when I started, I was buying and selling equipment a little bit more than I am now. But now I'm just trying to find other ways to talk about the equipment that I have, or just guitar stuff in general, from a perspective of the everyday guy, like just legitimately the everyday guy. Like a lot of guitar YouTubers say, I want to be the, showing from the everyday perspective, like the regular dude perspective, but they're also still going to NAMM. They're also still, to that. They're also, they've built up their channels to the point where they're successful enough to do the successful things. They get the free stuff from the companies. They get all that stuff. So it's hard to really look at them as a representation of the everyman. Now, maybe I'll get to that point. Maybe something, I'll get the sponsorships and all that kind of stuff. It's possible, and then I'll be in the same boat. I mean, it's a progression. It's what happens. It happens in life with jobs in general. You go to a job, you get a promotion, you go up the ladder, and then, then you're different from the low man again. You know what I mean? So, but right now, I kind of see myself as, I don't know, the everyday Joe, the guy who wants to buy all the gear but has to put it on credit cards, or who's kind of sort of in debt for it. Like that guy that wants to be a part of that world, but kind of struggles to be a part of that world. Or the guy who's been playing guitar his whole freaking life, who's been in bands, who's recorded albums. That's definitely me. And, you just want to talk about it. You just want to be a part of the world. You want to be a part of the conversation. Sorry. Bunch of grunk in my throat. But yeah, so that's how I see myself anyway. But a lot of these, I've been watching a lot of videos, and I haven't been, I don't know, I've been kind of slowing down on the videos, because honestly, it just feels like a barrage of advertisements is what it feels like. If you're not looking for that particular gear, I try to find the videos that are focusing on, maybe they're pushing some new gear in the background, but they're talking about something interesting, like a piece of something that I at least find interesting. Maybe I technically already know it, but it's interesting to hear somebody else's perspective on that. But yeah, so that is that. But sorry, people. I'm struggling through this episode today. I'm trying to find things to talk about. Every now and then I get on a roll here, and then it just kind of fizzles out a little bit. I wonder if there's any more guitar news that we can talk about here. Honestly, there doesn't seem to be a lot right now. Let's see. What do we got here? Oh, you know what? I know what we can do. We can go and do some more viewer comments. That'll be good. I did that in the last episode, and I think that went over pretty well. I just got to get to it now. Just Hold on a second here. How y'all doing today? While I'm waiting for my computer screen to load, I'm sitting here with a tray table in my living room on a computer gaming chair with my television screen as my monitor in front of me. Fun, right? But yeah, I got to tell you, this YouTuber thing is interesting, to say the least. It's, yeah, constantly trying to come up with content can be a bit of a struggle. It's not the easiest thing to do. Constantly coming up with content, So, all right. So let's go to comments here. I haven't really responded in a while to some of these. See some new comments. All right. So this is. I'm just going to read them and we'll see what they yield as far as conversation. This is from Kurt Elliott, Kurt Elliott 3344. He writes, I bought the Epiphone SG a few months ago and a 490R and a 490T pickup, and 490R and 490E pickups. It really opened it up. The stock pickups are pretty good, but I wanted the 490s. My brother has the Gibson version of the SG, and they both play the same and sound the same. After comparing the two guitars, there is a difference in the head and neck area. The Epiphone has just a little more meat, that area, which he kind of wrote weird. That area on Gibsons are prone to break. All in all, I love my SG. So he's saying that the Epiphone's neck is a little thicker at the top where the Gibsons typically break. That's actually a good thing, not a bad thing. I love my SG. I think it's great. SGs are fickle beasts, though. They really are. Especially since it's like a 61 bass, which is a slimmer neck profile. The neck profile that it is a slimmer neck profile. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But there are slimmer neck profile SGs. I get a lot of flex in my neck. It's a pain in the butt to tune sometimes, because once you get it, you hope that it stays in tune. Because you move when you try to tune, you're actually putting pressure on the neck. And then you got to kind of go back and keep fine tuning it until you get it right. But yeah. Somebody responded to the podcast last week. 63 Tim Fred. Thanks, Jay. This was really enjoyable. Well, thank you, Tim Fred. I know the deal with selling and buying gear. It's a sickness. Yeah, we're talking about that again, right? Yes, it is a sickness. I will agree. Somebody talking about the Roland JC40, which I don't have anymore. He's like, whoa, that chorus. Found my amp. I'm a Johnny Marr guy. This is magical. I don't care about high gain or huge crunch. That's cool. If you don't need that, then the JC40 is awesome. Like, honestly, I've grown to the point where I think I prefer a Fender clean to the JC clean. But the JC clean does have its place. And if you're trying to have that 80s kind of sound, a Roland JC, I'd love to have a JC 120. See, I'm talking about amps again, buying more stuff. I would love to have a Roland JC 120, personally. I think that would be a cool amp to have. Just, it's so big and it's so heavy. I don't really understand why I ever need anything like that. It's just not necessary. Plain and simple. All right, let's see. Anything interesting here? I don't want to read the same comments I read last time. I made a video about, I think we talked about this last week, though. I don't remember. Intonation frustration. Sky wrote, great video. I have a couple guitars that I have intonation problems with, so thank you. I've tried changing string gauge, so thanks. Yeah, what's weird about, I have, I don't know if I did talk about this a little bit last week. It's not a big deal. I can bring it up again. It's a simple thing. I actually ended up having to shim the neck on my Strat because the neck was crooked, which was causing some of the intonation problems. It was not crooked, but it wasn't straight to the body. So I guess it's a common thing with Strats. But I did shim it, and it did fix the problems. All right, let's see. all right, let's talk about this because this guy. All right, I actually let's go over this because this will be interesting because I can kind of like maybe try to be the counterpoint to what this guy said. Ian Curry 8844. I picked up a second-hand MK2 artist head, and I can't get a good tone out of this thing. I tried V30s, greenbacks, and even Eminence speakers. I can't get a good, crisp, glassy, clean tone. You're not going to get a good, crisp, glassy, clean tone on it. It doesn't have that. It's impossible. I've tried the tone shape. I've tried the cabinet resonance. I've tried presence and the EQ knobs. I can hook up any other head to these speakers and get a great clean tone. Orange head, H&K, etc. Never mind Vox and Fender combos. The distortion is brash and fizzy. It really bothers the ears on the high end, yet somehow has no presence at all. You can't get it to sound alive in the room like any of the aforementioned amps heads in the same room. Honestly, I hate it. I don't see the hype for this thing. It's trash in my view. Anyone want an MK2 artist head? To add insult to injury, I find it far too quiet with my 212 cabinets. Obviously, the claim that this is a 100-watt head is marketing lie. It draws 77 watts from the wall. It cannot put on 100 watts RMS, which is how amps and speakers are measured. I think this is the same guy. Last week, I commented on how he was talking about how the Katana artist doesn't actually put out the volume that it claims it puts out. So I'm gonna go and kind of be the devil's advocate here just for fun with this comment, because I personally like the MK2 artist head as opposed to this guy who obviously doesn't like it, which is fine. He is also trying to play it through regular cabinets, which I've heard actually people get pretty good results. He said V30s, greenbacks, and even Eminence speakers. I would highly suggest using the cabinet that it's designed for, the Boss cabinet that comes. I know he probably has his own cabinet, so he sees no reason to buy other cabinets. But honestly, I feel like these heads are designed for the speakers that they're set up with, so to speak. People say they get good results with regular other speakers, but honestly, the Waza cab that I have, the 212 with the Waza greenbacks, they're a little different sounding than straight up greenbacks, but that sound works really well with the head. I have a feeling that if you plugged it into a regular amp with straight greenbacks, you would find there would be some harshness to the sound that you wouldn't be able to dial out. So what's nice about it is the speakers that are designed by Boss work well with the head. And I think that's the problem that a lot of people run into, unless they're running it direct just for recording or not. But if you're trying to run it through cabs with V30s and greenbacks and Eminence speakers and whatnot, you're not. And you're never going to get a good, crisp, glassy, clean tone. The amp doesn't do that. It's not that type of clean. It's more of a JC clean, which I thought was glassy, but it's not really glassy. Glassy is more of a Fender thing. Like if you want that kind of glassy tone, you get it with a Fender. This just doesn't do that. It's a darker, clean sound. And honestly, that's the reason why I have a Tone Master Princeton, because I like that Fender-y clean, that sound. And it doesn't, you can get very close, but you can't get there, so to speak. So yeah, it's not going to happen with the artist head. You can do a lot with it. You can get very close, but that's not going to happen. Now he says the distortion is brash and fizzy. Okay, that probably has a lot more to do with the fact that you're running it through cabs with real V30s and greenbacks and Eminence speakers than it really bothers the ears on the high end. I don't find that at all. And it's probably to do with the speakers. It doesn't bother my ears. If anything, it's not very bright. Like it's a little darker sounding of an amp, and you have to dial down some of the bright. I don't really know. It really depends on the room you're in. You can't get it to sound alive in the room. See, now that's a thing. He puts alive in quotes, and I really feel like alive is somebody's way of sounding, like make it sound like a Marshall or a tube amp. It's not a Marshall. It's not a tube amp. But it does have a sound all its own, which is close to other sounds, close enough where you can be comfortable. He says he doesn't see the hype for this thing. See, I find it interesting because I think if you're comparing it against other tube heads, if you've got a bunch of stuff and you can, like, you're going into it. I'm not saying you as in Ian Curry 8844. I'm just saying in general, you, the collective you, the collective we. Going into this immediately to compare it to everything else that you own. If you own like 4 other tube amp heads, you're not going to like it. It's not going to be good enough for you. You're not going to want to like get rid of like your Marshall head, your orange head, your whatever, your Vox, your Fender for this thing. It's not going to happen. However, if you don't own a Marshall, a Vox, all those things, this thing can get very close to that sound. And as far as you know, it's good enough. Maybe if you were to compare it side by side to one of those things, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I can see the shortcomings. But it's not, the shortcomings are not that bad. I mean, it sounds really good on its own. But I would heavily suggest using the speakers that it's designed for, because I feel like these type of modeling amps are designed with specific speakers in mind. They're designed to the speakers that they come with. And when you start changing out the speaker and going with different speakers, it doesn't work. It just doesn't have. I've tried swapping speakers, like with the I had the for a little while I had the Next Tone, and I tried it with the greenback that comes with the Artist, and it was okay. I mean, it helped the distortion a little bit, I thought, because I was not a fan of the distortion on the Next Tone. It helped it. It got rid of a lot of that high-end fizziness, because the Next Tone comes with a Bluebell type speaker, a blue speaker. What do they call it? Alnico Blues. It comes with that. And I just wasn't a fan of that speaker. Actually, that speaker sounded great for cleans. If you're doing anything clean, it sounded amazing. Had a really nice clean sound. You could get that crisp, glassy tone that you're talking about, that this guy was talking about. You could get that out of the Next Tone. You could get very, very close to that, much better than you can with the Artist. But the distortion was crap. It was terrible. It just did not sound good to me, and I couldn't get it. I thought something was wrong with the speaker. Maybe there was. I went through 2 of them, and it was just the Next Tone, and it just wasn't working. Notice how there is no Next Tone head in cab, which is fascinating to me, because maybe they realize like it just doesn't match well with other speakers. It has to be with the speaker that it comes with. That's the thing with a lot of these modeling heads. They kind of have to go with the speaker that they're designed for. Like this head is sonically designed to go with those Waza Greenback speakers, plain and simple. They say it can go with any other speaker. You can just buy a head and use it with whatever cab you have, but in reality, it's tuned to those speakers. So the best sound you're going to get out of this is going to come out of the Boss cab. You kind of need the Boss cab for it to work. And I could see how somebody would just be like struggling with it and it's just not sounding right, no matter what the heck they do. So, yeah. That's my response to that. I'm not saying it's better than other tube amps and all that stuff, but I'm saying it has a place and it sounds great. And to me, and I've had a bunch of different tube amps, to me, I'm fine with the way it sounds. It sounds good. I always question it. Like in my brain, I'm like, is there something better out there? And then I'll plug into it, and I love the way it sounds. And it sounds great. Like in the room, I'm playing it, and it sounds awesome to me. So I'm like, every time I start second guessing it, and I plug into it and start playing it, by the time I'm done playing it, I'm totally happy with it. So it's like my brain just wants to keep second guessing it, but there's really no reason to. None at all. But if you're going to directly compare it to all these other types of amps, and you're going to start plugging the head into all these different types of cabinets, which are going to have different responses, it's not going to respond the same way an old school tube amp head would respond to these different speakers. I mean, you can plug you can plug an actual tube amp head into different speakers, and they doesn't sound good. You can go down the speaker rabbit hole, man. It's a rabbit hole. I did that for a little while too, and I don't intend to do that again. So, but yeah. On the flip side, here's another guy, the Katana Artist MK2. Can you dig it? I picked this up 2 days ago, and I hope I can get some amazing tones and sounds out of it. I hope so too. I this was like 2 months ago. He hasn't responded. There's been no response back, but yeah, I hope you can get some good sounds out of it. Seems like he enjoys it. So, let's see. This guy, Michael Bartlett Guitar, on Fender Deluxe Reverb Tone Master video that I made, the tips and tricks video. He says, fantastic amp. I love both my Tone Master Twin and my Tone Master Deluxe. Covers all my gigging and recording bases. See, so what I find interesting is you'll get a lot of people that'll complain about how they're comparing it to like the tube version, and they're saying, it's not the same. It doesn't work the same. But then you get somebody like this who's just, I love them. They're great. I gig with them. I record with them. Heck, the guys from Pearl Jam are using the Tone Master Pro with like FR cabs, like the Tone Master cabs, the Fender ones. I mean, they're using them live on stage. There's a band called Wet Leg that I like. They're out of like New Zealand or something like that. I don't know. They're from overseas, but they're a cool band, and they're kind of like an indie rock band, and they use Tone Master Deluxes live. I don't know about all the time, but I've seen them with the Tone Master Deluxes live, and I've heard it, and it sounds great. It sounds just as good as if they were using regular Fenders. So these amps have a place, and they're definitely usable. And for a gigging musician, for somebody that lives just at home and doesn't need to have all this tube amp gear, you just don't want it. Maybe you grew up in the 90s like I did. Like my most of my playing, my band playing years was like, the 90s was when I was in bands and playing out and doing all that stuff. I never owned anything tube back then. Everything was solid state. Tube was kind of like the dinosaur back then. It was the old guy. You didn't want a tube amp. You wanted a solid state amp. But inherently, we knew that the solid state stuff didn't sound as good as the tube amps, but we didn't want to deal with the hassle of having an old tube amp. To us, tube amps were like the old amps in the 90s when I was growing up. Tube amps were totally the old amps. And it's like the new stuff was all solid state, crate, PV. That's what was... if you went to a Guitar Center or a guitar store back in the 90s, what you saw was crates, PVs. Like, that's what was around. And if you had $600 to buy an amp, you ended up with a crate or a PV or something along those lines. Actually, I think there was, you probably, there used to be like Carvins and stuff around. You used to see a lot of that kind of stuff too. But that's what you would end up with if that's what you were looking for. So, tube amps came back in, I'd say, around 2010-ish or so. I don't know exact year, but you started to see this thing where tube amps were coming back into the fold again. And people were getting back into them. But for a long time, tube amps were avoided. You just... if you were gigging, you didn't want to deal with a tube amp unless you had one from like the 70s or something, where you got one from your dad or something like that, or some relative had given you one, or you bought one from a friend and you were just dealing with it. None of the bands that I was ever in, except for I was in one band, Room 18, and the other guitar player, Rob Marshall, played a Marshall. He had I think he had a solid state one at one point, though. I think he was using the valve state for a while. I'm not sure. I can't remember. He went through a bunch of them, and I can never remember. But he had the JSAM 800, is what I think is what he used to record the album with. There's a Room 18 album that they recorded I wasn't on it, but I came into the band later. And I think he used Tube for that. And the sound is good recorded. They got a good sound out of it. I felt like when they're listening to that album now, I feel like the guitar sounds, everything better, sounded better when because they started recording analog. And there's a couple songs on the album that were recorded in analog. And then the rest of it was done digitally. Because the guy who was recording at the studio, the studio guy, he switched over to digital. And I feel like you can hear the difference. I feel like the analog stuff just sounds bigger and ballsier. Whereas the Tube stuff sounds a little weaker and a little bit like just more constrained, you know? But anyway, yeah. So, I mean, either you like it or you don't. Honestly, I feel like for us, people like me that grew up in the 90s with solid state crates and stuff, like this stuff is great. This stuff is so much better than what that stuff was. It sounds so much better than those amps. Those amps sounded like garbage by comparison to what we're getting now with the Katanas and the Tone Masters and all that stuff. Yeah, is it digital? Is it going to last forever? Who knows? I don't know. But, yes. Okay, let's see. Here we go. This is another comment about the Fender Deluxe Tone Masters from my tips and tricks video. I don't know if I ever replied to this. It's from MRDY Vig, Mr. Die Vig, I guess. I was recently blessed with some substantial money to spend on a guitar and an amp. I knew immediately that the guitar was going to be a Fender American Telly or Strat. I went with Strat because I was making a Telly at the time. Cool. Then for an amp, I beelined to this amp. Solid state is the way to go in an apartment setting. I live alone in a bachelor suite, and this amp does it all. That's it, man. Unless you got your own house in a basement, you can blast everything under the sun. I feel like these amps just work really well for, everyday regular Joes who just want to play in their apartment and want to have a bedroom amp or an apartment amp or, and the thing about it is they can also translate into a live scenario. You can get in a band, you can play. I mean, I can use my freaking Princeton. I can use this Fender Tone Master Princeton with a band. It's loud enough to handle. I mean, yeah, I might have to prop it up or run it through the house PA as well, direct, to really make it sound bigger, but it can be done. I mean, I've used a Champ with a live band before. I played a Fender Tube Champ with a band before. If I can play a Fender Tube Champ with a band before, I can play this with a band because this is louder and bigger. So, yeah. Somebody is talking about, can you not do a bridge setup? Nice tone on it. Results surely, Alabama. Yeah, you can't do a bridge setup with the wrong pieces. Sorry, dude. I didn't have the right thing. It wouldn't set up properly. That's all. It's an old guitar that I had, a Squier Classic 550s model, which I had some issues with. But honestly, it wasn't a bad guitar either. It just needed a little bit of love. Okay. These amps are hold on one second. Interesting. Okay. This guy's talking about the jazz chorus. Okay. This is 3 months ago. People still respond to that Roland JC40. Can it be your only amp? Was my very first video, which was a couple of years ago at this point, and I still keep getting response to it because that video has the most views. It's a crazy amount of views, 30,000 views or some ridiculous thing like that. It has a really lot of views, a lot of views, and that was great. But I don't know if it is representative of what I'm doing right now, but he responds that yes, it can be your only amp with some caveats. Roland was not kidding when they named this series the Jazz Chorus. The well-deserved nickname for this class amp is the King of Clean. These amps are specifically designed to be played clean. Very true. The electronics that make the chorus so lush and full will work against various shredder effects. Yeah, very, very true. Even its own built-in effects are only meant to be used as a light seasoning. If you are not going to be focused on playing clean, it has been recommended for years that you get some type of guitar processor pedal and run the amp from the connections in the back. Ah, interesting. This will avoid the chorus circuitry, allowing you to use your effects with more stability and clarity. Okay, so he's saying to run it out direct and use a effects unit. That's an interesting way to look at it. Because basically the speaker and the chorus processing in the amp will affect the tone of the processor. Yeah, I found, and I don't know, the Roland JC40 that I had, which I really liked, by the way, which I almost wish I still had. I found that took pedals quite well. It could even take some distortions well. It can be a little fizzy with the distortion, but you can dial that out. You can EQ it out. And otherwise it sounds pretty good. Like you can get a lot out of it. It's not bad. I mean, it's not a bright amp with distortion pedals. Like it's fizzy, but not bright. If that makes any sense? It's a little darker of a sound, but and the dirty secret about the Roland JC40 is it's all digital, so it's not analog like the JC120 is. It's like a digital recreation of the JC120 in a smaller package. But don't let digital fool you into thinking that it's light and compact, because it is not light and compact. It is a heavy amp, but it does some really cool stuff because it's a stereo amp as well, and I like that. But yeah. So what are we at here? 1 hour and 6. I think we're good for today. I don't really have anything else left to say, and I hope you got something out of today, even though I was kind of subject hopping all over the place. But anyway, if you guys like this kind of stuff, please subscribe to my channel. Like the videos, comment on the videos. That actually seems to help almost more than the subscriptions, but I want the subscriptions as well. But yeah, so hopefully there'll be a video next week. I'm pretty sure I'm going to try to find some time to make a video for next week. I have a couple of ideas. It'll probably be guitar related. And as long as I got something worth talking about, I will find a way to do another podcast next week. And we will probably have this podcast on Friday as well, because my plan is to have a video on Wednesday and a podcast on Friday from now on. So that's going forward. That's going to be the way that I'm going to handle it. And occasionally I will mix the SFX loop stuff into this podcast. I think I'm going to still do a little bit of both, though. This podcast will be, it's called Into the Loop. So it's everything that the SFX loop and FX loop focuses on. It's all the subject matter that I focus on. So it'll be a little bit of everything, which I think is kind of fun. It's not so much of all the same thing. And, we all have different interests and tastes. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I won't see you, but you will hear me next time. All right. Take care. Thanks.